let's now take a look at the ClassMon Checklist feature. So you'll notice for each child we have a tab called Checklist. If you click on Checklist, we can see there's 10 reserved tabs for checklists. Now the first step is to create your checklist. So if we go Configuration, Manage Checklists, this opens up the checklist creator. Now to make a checklist, you just add a name. Now a couple of things to note in the checklist maker. First thing is that you can't use spaces in the name, so just use underscores where if you'd like to make a space, or don't use spaces at all. The second thing is that you can't edit checklists after they've been created. So just make sure that when you're building your checklist that you do take care to get it right before you hit the save button. Okay, so the first step is just to define how many rows and how many columns you'd like in your checklist, and then you create it. So here we have our checklist. It's just a simple grid, and we can now put in the headers for the columns and rows. So this is a gross motor checklist, so I'll just put some terms here: hop, skip and run. And don't worry about the expansion of the cells. If you click on the header up here, it will automatically expand. So up here you might have a level, and you might also have a comment box. So there's our checklist, very simple checklist. And another thing to note on the checklist maker is that you can also import and export checklists. So if you're part of a network of kindergartens, or if you have different teachers who'd like to use the same checklist, rather than each user having to build their own, you can simply export this checklist to a file and then give that file to the other user, and they're just tiny files. You could email them, and then the other user can import them into their version of ClassMon. Okay, so we're just going to save this checklist, and it's now saved, and when we hit OK, you'll see the first tab now becomes the name that we name that checklist. Okay, so we've done that, we've created our checklist. Now the next step is to assign that checklist to the students. So we go to our Configuration, Manage Classes, and we choose the tab called Checklist Allocation. And here we see the list of all our children, and we see any of the checklists that we've created. And we can simply check the boxes of the children we want to associate with the checklist, or if we want the whole class to use this checklist, we just select all. And we apply that. Okay, and that's done. So now, when we go to Adam's Checklist tab, we now have a checklist here in which we can record different information. So we might say today he's at level, and the comment here is okay. So it's just an area where you can record information for your checklist. And so if you go to another child and choose their checklist, you get access to the same information. If you need to go back to the child and update a checklist, then you can go and maybe they've increased a level, so we can say they're up to level 4 now, and it just holds the information. It's an auto save on the checklist. There's no save button. It will just hold that information there. Now if at any stage you'd like to print a checklist, you simply select the child you need to print the checklist for, choose the Reports button, and you'll notice an extra button is added down the bottom. So as you add checklists, you'll get more of these options, and you just select the checklist you want to print and hit OK, and it just prints a simple report of that checklist.